Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the week has gone well. And, they do fly by. And I keep mentioning this to people about how times seems to speed up. Soon the velocity will be so fast, I think it will just carry me over the edge. I'm really worried about it. No, I'm only joking. I had a wonderful morning, actually. It was a real privilege. The Kenya Chamber, of which I'm a patron member, hosted the East African par excellence Paul Kagame at the Villa Rosa Kipinski. The chamber gave His Excellency a Maasai warrior present, and he said, "We are all EAC warriors." And then subsequently I saw a tweet from Nation FM that the President and our President Uhuru Kenyatta have been installed as Maasai elders. And this was the photograph that accompanied the tweet. I mentioned many things to the President. One of them I said, I reminded him that at the Washington summit, he said the markets are never wrong. And saying that to that audience was exactly the right thing to say. And I wrote in August, there was no sharper signal delivered in Washington than those 5 words that President Kagame uttered. And I said, picking up the signal through the noise of our world in 2014 is no easy thing. And I also mentioned that comment, and then also mentioned how well the Eurobond had performed and what were exceedingly choppy waters. If you've never seen Main Speak, we hosted the President in 2011 in Kigali. Do have a look at that. And he really is a can-do president who enthused the audience, which it was a very can-do Kenya Chamber. I'll put up a photograph of the group photo. Home thoughts go back to Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again. Come, come, Rumi. And I went to visit Konya some years ago when Kenya Airways had a direct flight to Istanbul. And it was a dark night of full moon. As I entered this mausoleum, this is what I read. And I thought to myself, I've been to so many religious institutions because I believe in all religions, frankly. I think there is something in all of them. And if you're worshipping a god or whatever deity, that worship in a church is just as valid as that worship in a mosque. It's my mum who really made a deep impact on me in those matters. She used to sort of dip into everything. And it made such a big impression, and I keep going back to it. And, I still cannot think of another religious institution that I've walked into that has made me feel as did those few words. I'll put up a photograph of the Whirling Dervishes, whom we watched perform at the bottom of this mausoleum. And it was as if we were drinking the finest champagne. Then it came out, and I was intoxicated. I'll put up a photograph of one of my favourite places to visit, Lake Magadi. You can see the clouds reflected in the lake in this photograph. I go back to a story, an article in Bloomberg, "We believe you can shape serendipity." And so do I. This article, which is linked on Rich Wrap-Ups in case you haven't read it, serendipity can be shaped. Being in the right place at the right time is not a new concept. The catchy little phrase has been with us since childhood, but is a fortuitous encounter that leads to new business contract. Pure luck. Are some people luckier? Does luck last? We believe you can shape serendipity. This is a very counterintuitive notion. After all, most of us believe that serendipity is pure luck. How can you shape luck? While chance is an intrinsic element of serendipity, we believe that you can significantly alter the probability and quality of the unexpected encounters in our lives. Good point. They've got 3 choices that determine how we shape serendipity. Have a look at them. They're really good. I'll put up a photograph of the hot springs, Lake Magadi, and they are hot, let me say that. And another one of on the way to Lake Magadi, about 100 kilometers, journey's about 140 or something. You come to Olagasai. There I took a photograph of stone hand axes, which probably belonged to our earliest ancestors, because that was the area where I think it all started, around there. Mail and Guardian tweeted, David Mahlobo says glitches with counter-surveillance tactical measures caused signal disruptions. I just couldn't resist that, the thought of it. Debaltseve debacle puts Ukraine leader in jeopardy. That suits Vladimir Putin just fine. Less than a week after negotiating the renewal of the so-called Minsk ceasefire agreement with Russian President Vladimir Putin, his soldiers have come limping out of Debaltseve, a road and rail hub in eastern Ukraine that pro-Russian rebels were besieging even as the talks dragged on through the night. Not only does the fierce fighting cast doubt on the chance for a lasting truce, but it puts the Ukrainian president in an increasingly difficult position domestically. As Ukrainians mark the first anniversary of the bloody Maidan protest, and former President Viktor Yanukovych's disgraceful flight from power, many are asking themselves what has been achieved. Crimea has been lost, the economy is cratering, more than 5,000 people have been killed in a war with murky origins and little purpose. Accounts coming in, bear in mind that apparently in those negotiations with Poroshenko, Putin said, I've got them encircled, and Poroshenko, I think, was unable to seize that moment. Accounts coming from Debaltseve this week couldn't have been more disparate. Poroshenko travelled to the war zone, insisted until the bitter end that Debaltseve hadn't been encircled, even though soldiers and journalists were reporting that the town's last supply route had been turned into a gauntlet of withering enemy fire. On Wednesday, Poroshenko said that 80% of Ukrainian troops in Debaltseve, almost 2,500 men, by the end of the day had withdrawn, with 6 killed and more than 100 wounded. Earlier news reports said that as many as 8,000 Ukrainian soldiers were holed up in the city. The town has practically been turned into ruins, said the police chief of the Donetsk region. Ukrainian media reported that dozens of dead soldiers were being brought to the morgue in nearby Artemivsk. The leader of the Donetsk rebels said on Thursday that more than 3,000 Ukrainian soldiers had been killed. Putin couldn't help but gloat even before the retreat. Of course, losing is always bad, and it's unfortunate for the losing side, especially if you lose to a former miner or tractor driver. But that's life, and it will keep going. I don't think it's necessary to get too caught up by it. When asked about possible US arms shipments to Ukraine, Putin said that according to his information, the US is already delivering weapons, and there's nothing unusual about it. The loss of Debaltseve is so huge only because Kiev turned it into a symbolic redoubt. It wasn't worth the effort. The strategic value was in no way proportional to the troops put there. If Ukraine is going to lead a war of attrition against a far superior enemy, he said it must fight tactically, avoiding vulnerable bulges like the Debaltseve pocket and raising the costs for Russia's covert war. My conclusions are that on the ground, Vladimir has hammered Kiev. On Monday, the Kremlin's German propaganda arm, RT Deutsch, spread an unsubstantiated rumour that Poroshenko's family had fled Kiev. Put up a photograph of a pro-Russian rebel standing on top of a destroyed Ukrainian armoured vehicle. The Independent is reporting that the West is on a razor's edge over response to Russian expansionism. Britain, which along with the EU will be strongly criticised by House of Lords Committee today for sleepwalking into this crisis, was drawn towards centre stage after 2 Russian bear bombers flew off the coast of Cornwall, just outside UK airspace, and were met by RAF jets scrambled from their base in Lincolnshire. Put up a photograph of those 2 Russian bear bombers. So basically, suffering big time on the economy, but winning on the ground, as he did with Saakashvili, frankly. In Egypt, relatives of a group of Coptic Christians allegedly murdered by ISIS militants in Libya sit inside a house after hearing the news. Photographs really capture things at times. The release on Sunday of a video showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christian workers is but the latest of the IS in Iraq's documented horrors. In the video, the executioners make clear that the workers who were kidnapped from Sirte, Libya last year, were killed for purely sectarian reasons. Aping medieval jihadists, they vow to conquer Rome by Allah's permission. International markets, I'll stop with a photograph of the man at the center of a storm, Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis. And indeed, he's still there. I think it's not clear to me what's going to happen. But whatever happens, I think the euro is going down. Euro 113.40 last. Dollar index 94.60, Japanese yen 118.65, Swissy 0.9521 pound, below 154, 153.76, Aussie 0.7837, India rupee 62.255, Brazilian real 286.64, Egyptian pound 762.77, South African rand 11.6403. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits fell 21,000 yesterday, about twice as much as expected. Data helped reverse expectations of a possible delay in Fed rate hikes. Although the dollar slipped on dovish Fed minutes, the market is coming to think that the minutes are a bit stale because they don't reflect the strong January payrolls data. And that data was very strong, as I said. I wrote about it, the King Dollar. I said, on Friday, the United States released its typically market-moving non-farm payroll numbers. After interrogating the release data, I realized that the US posted the largest 3-month payroll gain going back to 1997. That was plain another era. I looked up the music from that year. To better anchor that period in my mind, I discovered that Tony Braxton's Unbreak My Heart, Biggie's Hypnotize, and Elton John's Candle in the Wind were the big songs in that year. 1997 was an eternity ago. I was in London running a repo desk. So, and I said this in February, the way I see it is this: Janet Yellen will hike the rate mid-year, and that is a shoo-in. Furthermore, big headline non-farm payroll print is entirely likely. A number big enough to put the frighteners looks increasingly likely. Then this benign Fed theory will get riddled with bullets, I said. And I think they're just one headline economic print away from having to raise rates. Euro dollar 113.44. I'll put up, but that seems to be moving around in this range, 112.70, 114.71. That we've been in for a while. Gold 1208.60. My view is the 2015 top is already in. Crude oil, last time I looked, $51.86. I think that's going to get creamed again. Storage is now full. You can buy it, but where are you going to put it? So where are the buyers? Let us eat cake. Robert Mugabe prepares for lavish birthday celebrations. This is a headline in The Guardian with a photograph of him eating his cake. A march by thousands through the streets of Burundi's capital in one of the largest demonstrations in recent years, following the release of a popular journalist and government critic from jail. We live given President Pierre Nkurunziza pause for thought, says the Mail and Guardian. I'm 50 and I've never seen such a crowd in the streets, said Fabien, teacher, saying the only event comparable in size he could remember was celebrations for Burundi's first elected president, Melchior Ndadaye, in 1993. I learned at Brazilian samba school, which was crowned champions of the Rio de Janeiro Carnival, is alleged to have received funding from Equatorial Guinea. Oxfam East Africa tweeted 40% of Somalis rely on remittances to meet daily basic needs like food, health and education. That lifeline's been cut off, as we found out. South African all-share up 6.52%, a whisker this year, a whisker below a fresh record high. And as I mentioned before, a ton of money's got displaced from Lagos into Nairobi and Johannesburg and Egypt. Egypt is up 6.25% year to date. Nigeria up for the fourth session, but still down 15.51% year to date. Ghana down 4.75% year to date. Dark times, South Africa, Ghana crises reveal how Africa rising will look like without power. And just saying, Ghana and African economic success story was run into headwinds, lack of reliable power supply, dented investor confidence. Tanzania is lining up a sovereign bond debut. This is in the FT. We still have to complete the first country rating, we hope, by the end of the fiscal year. But the bond will come in the next fiscal year, which starts in July. It could be before 2016. Coming to Kenya, interesting piece in Reuters about supermarket chains vying to unlock Kenya's retail market. Analysts say the penetration of formal retail is 25 to 30%, double that of Africa's biggest economy, Nigeria. In addition, the average value of a shopper's basket has risen 67% in 5 years to $20, making Kenya the continent's fastest growing retail market, say industry executives. The Nairobi All Shares closed at a record 9 sessions in a row, and I think it's going to make it 10 today. It's up 7.84% year to date. It's been a storming run higher. Safaricom also had a record yesterday, will surely close at another one today. As of this morning, it was up 7.8291% year to date. If you haven't seen the interview I did with Bob after the first half results, please have a look at it. That's linked up. NSE 20 is at a 2006 high, and it's up 7.07% year to date. I wish you a great weekend and hope to see you next week.